I heard the wind scream across Brooklyn's deserted streets as I stepped out of my sleek black sedan and into the chilly night air. The city glittered with neon brilliance and throbbed with energy, yet to me it seemed as if the world had lost its sound. I was tardy once more, though that was nothing unusual. My role as a CEO demanded endless late nights and meetings, and for months now, I'd let work engulf me. As I strolled through the lobby of our upscale apartment building, the city's constant hum faded into mere background noise. I failed to notice the dark silhouettes skulking in the room's corners, nor did I catch the soft murmurs of other residents. My thoughts were far away, occupied by an unexpected tightness in my chest and a nagging sense that something was off. Stepping off the elevator and into our penthouse, I found the door swinging open before I could even grasp its handle. Vivien, my wife of 7 years, stood there looking more stunning than ever, yet there was an odd air about her. Her customary smile failed to reach her eyes. She was dressed to the nines despite it being a Wednesday night, and the perfume she wore was unfamiliar, heavier than usual. "Hey, you're home late again," she remarked in a tone that struck me as unnervingly casual. "I was just about to head out, actually," she added. I paused, uncertain. Something in her tone just didn't sit right with me. It came off as curt and detached, and I couldn't quite pinpoint why. Vivien had never treated me with such coldness before. I forced a smile and leaned in to kiss her cheek, but she shifted just enough to dodge it. "Where are you headed?" I asked, my voice suddenly strained. Vivien hesitated, almost imperceptibly, then replied, "Just stepping out for a while. Don't worry about it." Yet I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling deep in my stomach. Something was amiss. She was concealing something. I had been so absorbed in work, blind to the subtle shifts in our relationship, but now, standing there, I could feel it. There was a palpable chill between us, and it wasn't solely because of the weather. "I'll be back soon," she stated as she brushed past me to grab her coat. I stood frozen, my eyes fixed on her every move. As she turned to leave, my mind raced. I recalled seeing that coat before, worn for dinners and nights out with friends, but never when she was merely stepping out for a bit. My heart thumped wildly as the disturbing thought crept into my mind. Could she really be involved with someone else? "Vivien," I managed to say, my voice barely escaping, tight and laden with an unnamed emotion. She paused and glanced over her shoulder, her eyes momentarily flashing a hint of something I hadn't seen in ages. Guilt, perhaps, or something even darker. She quickly masked it with a smile, but it was too late. I knew then. I didn't need proof or a confession. I simply knew the truth. "I'll be back," she repeated, her voice sounding a bit too rehearsed. She departed, the door clicking shut behind her with a finality that tightened my chest. I stood there, staring at the void where she had just been, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight of a truth I wasn't ready to confront. Something had shifted, and it was far too late to feign ignorance. The person I thought I knew, the woman I believed I could trust, was slipping away, sinking into a deception I doubted I could ever escape. As I moved to the window and gazed out at the twinkling city lights below, one thought echoed in my mind. Was this the start of the end? I couldn't shake the feeling that something awaited my discovery, something that would upend everything, something that would shatter all I had believed about our perfect life together. I stood by the window, gazing at the hazy city lights below, though my thoughts were far from the glittering Brooklyn skyline. My focus was solely on Vivien. My heart clenched with a blend of distrust and terror that tightened inside me. I had always believed in her, yet the chill in her gaze this evening signaled that something was different. For weeks, something had felt amiss, and I could no longer brush it aside. The delicate changes in our bond had crept in gradually, much like a fissure in a once flawless pane. Initially, it was minor details. Vivien growing distant, lingering on phone calls for hours, occasionally laughing too heartily at secrets meant only for her. I had dismissed it as mere career stress or a passing phase. Yet deep within, a quiet inner voice kept insisting that something was slipping away from me. I recalled the moment we first crossed paths. I was merely an eager young man striving to climb the ladder at a tech startup. Vivien burst into my life like a storm, a natural force with a brilliant smile and an untamed spirit. We encountered each other at a gallery exhibit, where her laughter resonated like a captivating melody. She embodied all that I never realized I desired. Her unpredictability and thrill made me feel truly alive for the first time, no longer merely pursuing the next achievement. We became inseparable, sharing visions of our future and constructing a life side by side. She had been my rock, my steady force, and together we forged something that seemed unbreakable over the years. On the surface, our relationship appeared flawless. I had immersed myself in work while Vivien remained ever supportive, always by my side. Yet somewhere along the journey, I lost sight of the tiny, significant moments that truly mattered. At social gatherings, Vivien was the undeniable center of attention, charming everyone effortlessly, and I never gave it a second thought. I trusted her implicitly. I believed I knew her, but now, standing alone in our apartment, uncertainty crept in. There was a change in her, and I found myself questioning exactly when it had begun. On the night she departed, I didn't even inquire about her destination. At that moment, it appeared unimportant. She had always lived her own life beyond me, and I had accepted that reality. Yet tonight, everything felt entirely different. The space between us was tangible, even suffocating. It seemed as though she was gradually vanishing right before my eyes. That persistent nagging sensation in my gut refused to let me rest. I needed to uncover what was unfolding. I had to witness it firsthand, so I made a firm decision. I wasn't going to remain idle in the dark, waiting for answers. I was determined to uncover the truth, regardless of where it might lead. The following days blurred together, filled with relentless tension. Vivien's presence at home dwindled more and more. Her explanations became increasingly flimsy. Nights that began late at the office morphed into enigmatic girls' nights out, with friends unknown to me, yet she would still grace me with that heart-skipping smile, and I would let it pass. But no longer, not when the once unbreakable trust was gradually disintegrating. I could no longer ignore it. I enlisted a private investigator, a reserved, meticulous man named Detective Reynolds, known for delivering results. Detective Reynolds maintained discretion, which was precisely what I required. I needed someone to dig deep and expose whatever secrets Vivien was concealing. I craved the truth, even if it meant my own ruin. With each passing day, my anxiety mounted. I found it impossible to concentrate on work, as the sense that something was eluding me grew stronger. Then, the report arrived. The investigator had trailed Vivien during one of her outings. I reviewed the details with trembling hands as the truth struck me like a sledgehammer. Vivien had been seeing someone, a man I had never even heard of. They had been secretly meeting for weeks, always behind my back. The investigator even captured several photos. Vivien laughing, her face radiating in a manner I hadn't witnessed in months. The man accompanying her was older, exuded confidence, and appeared far too at ease with her. It was evident that what they shared went well beyond a mere casual fling. My heart sank and my breath hitched. The world I believed was secure and predictable had been utterly shattered. I couldn't tell whether it hurt more, the betrayal itself, or that Vivien had been so methodical and calculated. For weeks, she had deceived me, gradually slipping away, all while I remained oblivious. It wasn't solely about the affair. It was the deception, the manner in which she had silently supplanted me, constructing a life without me while feigning that everything was perfect. Below is your reworked text. Each sentence has been rewritten to preserve the original meaning and details, while using different sentence structures and vocabulary in a conversational, first-person tone. Invisible padding has been applied where necessary so that each sentence's character count exactly matches the original. For the first time in years, I felt the burden of my own decisions. Had I overlooked something? Had I been so absorbed in my career, so intent on building my empire, that I missed the fractures in my marriage? Had I been oblivious to the hints, trusting Vivien when I should have been more alert? With the unvarnished truth confronting me, I experienced a tumult of fury and sorrow, yet above all, a profound, gnawing void. The woman I cherished, the one with whom I had shared every part of myself, had betrayed me, and in that moment, I realized nothing could ever be restored. I gazed out the window once again, the city lights below a smeared blur. A part of me yearned to flee, to confront Vivien, to demand explanations, to scream out loud. But another part, the part that had been so deeply wounded, understood it was too late for that. The damage had been irrevocably done. The trust had vanished, along with any hope of mending what we once had. All that remained was to figure out my next move. My mind spun with a storm of emotions as I sat alone in our dim apartment, the weight of the investigator's report heavy in my grasp. My chest constricted with a gut-wrenching truth. Vivien had been involved with another, not merely once, not as a fleeting error, but in a full-blown affair. The betrayal was embedded not only in her deeds but in years of trust that now slipped away like sand through my fingers. I could barely draw a breath. The room's air had grown suddenly thick, oppressively suffocating. I tried to concentrate, to calm my frenzied thoughts, but each time I closed my eyes, I saw Vivien laughing, caressing another man, the way she once caressed me. That very thought churned my stomach. How long had this been unfolding? How long had she been covertly slipping away behind my back, sharing whispered secrets with someone else while I remained unaware? Anger surged within me, fierce and burning, alongside a crushing heartbreak that confirmed I'd been living a lie. Hours slipped by, yet I couldn't bring myself to leave the apartment. The silence was overwhelming, pierced only by the soft hum of the city beyond. It felt like an eternity since Vivien had departed. I longed to call her to demand answers, but a part of me realized it was already too late. What explanations could she possibly offer to justify the gut-wrenching images tormenting my mind? She had betrayed me, and the truth was indisputable. I didn't require her words to comprehend the reality. Then, the phone rang. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, its bright screen illuminating the darkroom. I didn't even need to check to know who it was. Vivien. Her name blazed on the screen, her smiling photo greeting me, yet I couldn't bring myself to answer. What would I say? What could she possibly say? The silence between us grew thick with every unspoken word. I let it ring out, each echoing tone dragging me deeper into a pit of despair. As the night wore on, my anger gradually yielded to something colder, more calculated. I realized that confronting Vivien now would only give her the advantage. She had already twisted the situation enough, already commandeered the narrative. No, I wouldn't face her just yet, not while I was still reeling from the blow, not while the truth had so completely shattered me. Instead, I chose another path. I needed to seize back control, to reclaim the power I'd lost in this chaos. And to do that, I had to vanish. The idea of abandoning everything, the life we'd built, the home we'd shared, filled me with a resolute determination. I had toiled too long for all I had, too long to let it be snatched away so effortlessly. I refused to let Vivien's affair annihilate me, not when I still had the chance to reclaim it all. By the time Vivien returned later that evening, my decision was already set. I had spent those hours meticulously planning, plotting how to disappear, how to reclaim the life I had forged without her. I wasn't entirely sure what I expected when she walked back through that door, but I knew it wasn't a reunion. When the sound of her key echoed through the apartment, I didn't lift my gaze. I remained seated, my back turned to her, as if bracing for a battle I doubted I could win. I watched as Vivien entered, her heels echoing on the hardwood floor while she made her way through the living room. The atmosphere in the room was thick, laden with the weight of unspoken words between us. She offered no warm greeting, not in that familiar, loving manner. Instead, an odd tension seemed to hover in the space. I could sense it, much like the eerie calm preceding a storm. I rose slowly, turning around to meet her gaze as she entered the room. Her eyes met mine, revealing a brief flash of discomfort, quickly concealed by a smile that failed to light up her eyes. "I'm back," she announced, her tone overly light and sounding rehearsed. I offered no smile. At first, I remained silent. I simply stared at her, absorbing the sight of the woman I once adored, now turned into a stranger. My heart ached, yet I knew there was no returning to the past. I had already decided. "I know," I finally replied, my voice cold and detached. Vivien paused, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly as if attempting to decipher my thoughts. The silence stretched between us, heavy and oppressive. "Where is everything?" she inquired, her eyes scanning the room. It wasn't long before she noticed that something was off. The living room, once warm with photos and personal mementos, now appeared stark and empty. The walls, once decorated with memories of our shared life, were now bare. Even the shelves had been cleared away. I did not respond immediately. I just walked over to the door, opened it, and stood there in the frame, silently inviting her to come in and witness it for herself. Vivien hesitated, a flash of confusion passing through her eyes. "Daniel, what's happening?" she asked, her voice trembling a bit, yet it was as if she already sensed the truth. I stepped aside, allowing her to pass, my eyes tracking her as she moved through the doorway into the void that had once been our sanctuary. She paused for a long moment, the realization slowly dawning on her. The silence was deafening. When Vivien turned back toward me, her face drained of color and her lips quivering, she whispered, "Where is everything?" I then stepped into the room behind her, my presence gradually filling the space. "It's all gone," I stated, my voice flat and void of any emotion. "I've taken everything. The house, the life we built, every bit of it." My words left Vivien breathless, her eyes widening in shock. At first, she could scarcely comprehend it. It felt unreal. This just couldn't be happening. Yet as she glanced around, the barren room confirmed the grim reality. I had taken everything. You're leaving?" she asked in a voice scarcely above a whisper. "I'm not leaving, Vivien," I replied, my gaze unflinching. "I'm gone. Everything I labored for, everything we had, it's gone just like that," I declared. My voice cracked on those final words, yet I swiftly regained composure, my anger giving way to a calm determination. I was no longer angry. I was finished. Done with the deceit. Done with the betrayal. Standing in that cold, vacant apartment, I realized that the only path to reclaiming my power was to walk away, taking everything and disappearing without a trace. I watched Vivien stand frozen, a storm of emotions overwhelming her. Confusion, disbelief, and mounting panic, yet it was too late. The damage had been done, and no apology or explanation could mend what was shattered. I was gone, and nothing could ever bring me back. The door slammed behind Vivien, its echo reverberating through the silent apartment. She remained frozen in the center of the room, her mind reeling to grasp what had just occurred. The emptiness around her felt suffocating. The walls that once cradled our memories now lay hollow, stripped of all that once made this place our home. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her chest tightening with panic as she searched desperately for something, anything, to explain this madness, but found nothing. There was no trace of me, no explanation, no apology. She dashed back to the living room, her heels clicking on the bare floor, yet the stark emptiness only deepened the dread that churned in her gut. Her fingers trembled as she grabbed her phone, desperately dialing my number. The screen lit up briefly before switching to voicemail. Time and again, her calls went unanswered, and with every silent ring, the panic inside her intensified. "Daniel, please," she whispered to herself, the words barely leaving her lips as the full weight of the situation crashed over her. I watched Vivien stagger toward the couch, the burden of it all finally overwhelming her. I noticed her hands trembling as she ran them through her hair, desperately trying to keep herself composed, yet failing. I wondered, what had she done, and how had everything spiraled to this point? It struck me that the affair, her hidden secret, her ultimate betrayal, once appeared so trivial, almost insignificant. It had begun as mere excitement, a fleeting thrill, but now, in the emptiness of our apartment, she recognized just how gravely she'd misjudged it all. She had acted out of selfishness, believing she could maintain two separate lives, that she could hold on to my love while flirting with danger. Yet, like all fire, it burned fiercely, and those very flames had now engulfed everything. I had seen through her charade, and now I was gone, taking with me everything that once mattered. While she sat in that desolate silence, I noticed her phone buzz with a fresh notification, its screen lighting up. It turned out to be a text from me. I could tell her heart had fluttered as she hastily unlocked it, her eyes devouring the sparse words I had sent. "I'm not coming back, Vivien. I've taken everything, and I'm finished. You'll have to live with the chaos you created. Don't try to find me." That stark finality hit her as hard as a blow to the gut. There was no possibility for negotiation, no opportunity for her to offer an explanation. I had made up my mind, and nothing she did could alter that truth. I saw her drop the phone onto the floor, her hands falling to cover her face as tears began streaming down. She had been so absorbed in her own cravings and desires that she failed to notice how far she was driving me away, taking my love for granted. Now it was too late. There was simply no way to reverse this course. Her sobs resonated through the room, echoing off barren walls, and the emptiness only magnified the depth of our loss. I could tell she longed to scream, to shout, to do anything to undo the damage, yet nothing remained to be done. I was gone, taking with me all that she had built her life around, the life she once believed was real. Hours slipped by as the night dragged on, yet the pain I saw in her never waned. Outside, the city buzzed with activity and busy lives, while inside our apartment she was left with only the ruins of her own choices. She couldn't remain in this place, a space that now contained nothing but memories of all she had lost. I watched her snatch her coat and dash out of the apartment, the cold night air striking her like a harsh slap as she stepped onto the street. Yet, that biting cold failed to dull the ache pounding in her chest. Her footsteps echoed along the vacant sidewalk, and with each step, I sensed she felt increasingly isolated and disconnected from everything she had once known. It was clear she had no destination in mind, no idea of how to mend this broken path. All that remained was the painful truth that the life she had once been so certain of was utterly gone. I was gone, leaving behind nothing but a void. As she wandered the city aimlessly, her mind must have been flooded with regret, despair, and loneliness. One fact clear: she had lost me. She had pushed me too far, shattered my trust, and now there was no turning back. Even if she sought me out or begged for forgiveness, I suspect she knew deep inside that it was already too late. I had made my choice, leaving her alone to bear the full brunt of the consequences. Her phone buzzed once more, yet this time I saw that she didn't dare pick it up. She simply couldn't. It was a message from the investigator, the one who had been tracking her, documenting the moments she believed were concealed. I observed her close her eyes, as if attempting to shut out the surging panic within. She had already lost it all. What more could there possibly be to uncover? The truth had been laid bare, and there was no escaping its grip. The city lights blurred around her as she ventured deeper into the night, each step pulling her further away from the life she once knew. I could only imagine that she wasn't sure what she was hoping to find, yet she kept on walking, unable to shake thoughts of the man she had lost. And as the night wore on, it became apparent that the hardest part wasn't losing me, but rather losing herself along the way. Days must have dragged on in a fog of confusion and regret for her. She seemed to have turned into a mere shadow of her former self, drifting through life like a machine, every thought overwhelmed by the void I had left behind. I later learned that she had tried reaching out, sending countless messages and leaving voicemail after voicemail, yet received no response. The emptiness in her heart seemed to mirror the barren apartment they had once called home. The once familiar sights of our home now felt alien, as though our shared life had been replaced with something dark and foreign. She was utterly alone, a loneliness that ate away at her from the inside out. Vivien had never truly understood how much of herself had been entwined with Daniel, how deeply he had grounded her in a world that now felt like it was slipping away beneath her feet. He had been her anchor, the steady force amidst her chaos. But now, without him, she was lost. The weight of her affair, The one that had once seemed like a harmless indulgence had transformed into something monstrous, suffocating her under its consequences. She had believed she could manage it all, keep her two lives separate, but she had been so very wrong. Her days blurred into a desperate attempt to salvage anything from the wreckage. She went through the motions at work, sat in meetings, responded to emails, but she was never fully present. Every conversation felt like static, every task a distant echo of a life she had once been sure of. And at night, when she returned to the apartment, the silence was waiting. An old friend, a cruel reminder. One evening, after another unanswered call, Vivien found herself standing outside what had once been their home. The door loomed before her, not just as an entryway, but as a barrier, one that kept her from the life she had shattered. She pressed her hand against the cool wood, her fingers trembling. She couldn't keep living like this, pretending that things were normal when her entire world had collapsed. She needed to do something, anything, to make it right. But no matter how hard she searched for the right words, no matter how many times she rehearsed what she might say, nothing felt like enough. Daniel had made it clear. He wasn't coming back. With a shaky sigh, she pulled out her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen, considering whether to call him again, to beg. But the idea of hearing his voice, of hearing the finality in it, was almost too much to bear. Then, her phone buzzed again. It wasn't Daniel. Her stomach twisted as she saw the notification from the investigator. What now? Was he still watching her? Did he have some final piece of evidence to seal her fate? Her hands shook as she opened the message. I've got information. I think you should see it. Let me know when you're available. Her mind raced. What could it be? The affair was already exposed. There was nothing left to uncover. Was there? A gnawing feeling deep inside told her she needed to know. Even if it hurt. She responded. The meeting was set for later that evening. As Vivien walked through the city toward the small, nondescript cafe the investigator had chosen, she felt like she was walking toward something inevitable. Every mistake, every betrayal, every choice had led her to this moment. Inside, the cafe was nearly empty. The investigator sat in the back, his face shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. When she approached, he looked up, his expression unreadable. He didn't need to say anything. His presence alone was enough of a reminder of what she had lost. She sat down, folding her trembling hands together on the table. I know why you're here, he said, voice steady. But what I found, it's not pretty. Vivien didn't respond. She only nodded. She was too exhausted to speak, too drained to hope for anything but the truth, no matter how painful. The investigator slid a folder toward her. Vivien hesitated before pulling it closer, her fingers brushing against the paper. Inside were photographs. More than she had expected. They showed her and him, the other man, captured in fleeting moments she had thought were hers alone. They laughed together, touched in ways she had convinced herself weren't damning. Each photo was a knife, carving into her. But there was one more picture. Not of her. It was of Daniel. He was in the distance, staring at something in his hand. His expression unreadable. Vivien's breath hitched. She knew that handwriting on the envelope he held. The investigator leaned forward. He knew. Before I ever did the work for you, before any of this. He found out on his own. Vivien's blood ran cold. And that letter? The investigator sighed. It was his way of saying goodbye. She swallowed hard, her throat burning. Daniel had known. Long before she had even thought to fix things. She had never stood a chance. That letter wasn't just a farewell. It was the last, quietest blow in a war she had already lost. Her vision blurred as the weight of it all crashed down on her. Daniel was truly gone. The last fragile thread of hope she had been clinging to had just snapped. And all that remained was the wreckage she had created. As her tears fell silently onto the table, Vivien realized the truth. There was nothing left to fight for. Only the emptiness. And the long, lonely road ahead.